has got a lot to share.
Hey, welcome to the another edition of Radio Friends again. This for May 31st, 2024. I'm Steve Parker here in Berlin, Connecticut, and we already have a nice group of guys just lining up for us. Let's see, we've got Dave Overson is here, Dick Kalt, Pete Salant, Tracy Carmen, Bob Craig, Ed Bruder. We've got John Leslie, and we've got let's see. Wait a minute.
John Landry.
John Landry is over there. I've got which Jim do I have up here?
Harrington.
Oh, I didn't see him. Where is he go? Where is he?
He's dark.
Oh,
yes, I'm always dark.
Oh, there's Jim Harrington. All right. And yeah.
Jack Lawrence.
Jack Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
Tracy.
So Jim, just look for the Steeler hat.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Parker.
Morning, Mr. Parker.
Morning, Dad.
All right. Oh my gosh. I don't even see me up here anymore. Am I still here? Yeah.
You're still there.
Hey, listen, I don't know what kind of microphone this is, but I found this picture of Charlie Parker. It was a caricature that was done years ago, so I thought it might be fun to hang that up on the wall. But
That's the
when
same
he
one.
was in-
Same mic type of mic.
yeah, it was his favorite place, of course, to be hanging out in the studio there with Dave. Well, pretty much any part of the building except Corson's office. Rest of the place you really enjoyed.
Steve, didn't you tell me once that your dad, when he was a young man wanting to get into radio, used to practice in front of a 10-watt light bulb?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he did. And he said once he got up to 100 watts, he knew he was ready to go. And it wasn't until when Dave and I were doing the show over at WPOP, and I know I've told this before, but it made it all worthwhile to me. Got off the air and there was a little pink message slip and said, this lady wants you to call her. And her name was Janet Locke. And I called her up and she goes, any chance that you're related to Charlie Parker? And I said, yeah, that was my dad. She goes, he used to live with your father. And I said, huh? Because I knew that he, right out of, he was barely just a kid. He just started at DRC when he met my mom. He goes, oh, no. When my dad was a kid, his mom passed away. I think my dad may have been around 12 or so. And he wanted to finish school in Old Weathersfield. And I guess my grandfather met someone else and they were going to be moving, I think, to Bloomfield. And there's a place down the street. My dad used to say he would board at this house down the street. Well, this little girl lived in the head house. She was a little girl, like a toddler. And she said to me, she goes, your dad loved radio so much that every day when he'd come home from school, he'd have dinner with us that night. Then he would take the newspaper and he would go upstairs. And I said, and he'd take the lampshade off the lamp and he'd read the newspaper into the light bulb like it was a microphone. She goes, how did you know that? I said, he always told us that. But now the fact that you have verified that story, they could come in today and tell me that the show's over, and it made it all worthwhile. And then she and I kind of connected for the next few years. And she said that he inspired her to get into radio. And she had a lot to do with starting, I think it was, Dick would know, was it WHUS, which was the Yukon radio station way back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this woman was many decades ago. Was involved with that because my dad kind of inspired her. So that was kind of neat. Yeah, he would pretty much talk in anything.
And I mentioned something here. I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard of or knew Phil Markert from WHEN in Syracuse, a legend in the Syracuse market for 50, 60 years. Died yesterday at the age of 92.
Oh.
Phil used to play the piano. He had a piano in the control room. And he would sing the school lunch menus and play music. and
I like to see him sing Bob Craig's menus.
And, a real quick story. I was part of the team that was brought in to go against Phil and WHEN at WFBL in Syracuse. We couldn't make any headway. He was just too strong. And we had a great staff, great sound, couldn't make it. So ultimately, I end up back in Binghamton, New York, doing mornings, and Phil comes to Binghamton and works at WINR, singing the school lunch menus. The exact reverse happened. I kill him in the ratings. Absolutely massacred him in the ratings. And that was then he went off and went someplace else. But
That only proves one thing.
Clearly a great guy.
Yeah, that only proves one thing. What works good in one market does not work in another
Dave,
market.
there you go. Yep.
So true.
So,
Yeah.
Steve, you and I could have gone into a different market and we could have killed, couldn't we?
Yeah, Middletown was waiting, but
Yeah, but you blew it.
yeah.
You know, it's facility, signal. You already had the content. So if you had been on, you know, a full power station or an FM station or something.
Content. What content? We had no content.
Oh,
We
no,
walked in and
Well, we did it-
Just content.
that we would pretty much accept anything that came along. I think the wildest one though we ever did was, we were doing Dave and I. Of course, if there's a camera or a microphone, we're going to kill anybody if they try to get it away from us. But Dave and I did some local television, and it was hysterical. We used to do local TV now for one town, for Newington, local, but you did have cable when cable was, there was no satellite, there was nothing else. So you did have
community access.
Yep.
Community
but,
access.
But it was hysterical because they wanted to do a telethon, a 24-hour telethon to raise money to have parades. So it was me and Dave and a bunch of parades in between us begging for money. And we would have guys behind us like in a phone bank, and most of them were asleep because no one was calling. So, I mean, it was beyond anything you could possibly make up.
We had a guy there who was from the Burma campaign. These were all veterans that were behind us taking the calls, and this guy, it looked like he was in a Cub Scout uniform. It was the blue, the yellow tie, and that. And he would just sit there and stare at the phone. And all I could think of was this would have been a perfect sketch for Bob Newhart when he had his Newhart show and he did television on the TV. And anyway, he's sitting there. We're all done with the telethon. Everybody's leaving, and this guy is still sitting there. And all I could imagine was we turn the lights out and the guy is still sitting there. We walk up and goes, "Oh my God, he's dead." That's all I could picture was this guy being dead. But,
and the funny thing is, really what happened was access television back then, every town had a TV station, and it was like back in the day when everybody had a radio station. And it really was. That's where you could, talk about the local dog catcher or anything else. But and it was so funny because it was a great place to, break your ass, and I would tell people that, and unfortunately what we're having right now is just, problems, finding people to volunteer. But I will tell you, one night at 2:00 in the morning, our attorney, who had been out having a couple of cocktails, came to the TV station in the middle of the night, and he said, "I just want to let you know that I'm going home, and I just thought I'd stop by and say goodnight to him." And we said, "Could you go get us an interview?" We sent him up to the Olympia Diner, which was back then 24 hours a day, and
still is.
And no, not anymore.
No,
it's a sad thing. And they he went in there, and that's where all the bands would go after they got done playing and everything else. So he's in there, and he interviewed the rock band Spank. And I went, "Oh, this is too good." And here he is, half-cocked, interviewing a rock. I said, "Just the fact that you interviewed Spank is enough to keep us going for the next 10 hours.
Oh God.
Unbelievable. But it was, and all that's even changed now because, kids all want to do their iPhones and go up on YouTube, and, nobody really has much.
There are no more icons.
I think what I thought might be a cool thing to just throw out there for the heck of it with everybody, especially in the business. In the business, can you remember what station you were at and the first time you got involved with maybe promoting a concert or meeting a star or something like that? Because a lot of people, and Pete's nodding his head up and down, a lot of us in the business you didn't know who's going to come through the front door sometimes on tour. So Pete, I saw you raised your head.
I have a story at my first full-time gig in Manchester, New Hampshire. Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show were appearing, and we were sponsoring it, or we were presenting it. And the guys needed a ride to the radio station for the interview and then to the venue. And I had, at the time, a 1962 Volkswagen Bug. It was 11 years old, but it it was a mess. Had no floor, had a plywood floor, and no clutch. You had to time it so that you'd shift at the right time. And there's who was the lead singer of Dr. Hook, the guy with an eye patch. He's sitting in my back seat in this shit car. Pardon me. And we're driving to the venue. He lights up a spliff or whatever, and that's my first recollection. And perhaps the week after, I saw my first real rock concert, which was Deep Purple at the Boston Garden. I brought the very pregnant wife of our overnight guy down because he had to work, so we drove down together and had a great time.
Now, Dick, you had mentioned, I know PLR brought in tons of bands, but Dick, before we went on the air, you mentioned somebody were you backstage with or something, or what was that story you were alluding to?
Well, no, I met a number of them. Of course, I worked very closely with Jimmy from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But if I go back to when I was on the air in Detroit back in the middle 60s, actually in the early 60s, I was on the air in Lansing. We used to do the birth announcements on the air, things like that, you know. And that was that was radio. That was, you know, who got arrested last night, how many births, who was born, and all that. But first one that I met that I recall was James Brown. And he had played at the Olympia in Detroit. This was in the very late 60s. But when we got going at PLR, we had them coming up to the station all the time. I had lunch with Frank Zappa in my office one day. That was a trip and a half. And so whenever he came back to New Haven, he came over to the station and came up to the office because he wasn't being bothered. Nobody ever knew he was there. I said, you can always come on up, have some lunch. I don't care. Do it, you know, do whatever you want as long as it's not there when you leave. And he was one of the most interesting and brilliant people you'd ever want to meet. And some of the very best of his musical production was not airable because it was too edgy, but we would play it. And I think I mentioned this to you before, that he had one song called Dynamo Hum that you have to someday look up and listen to. You'll know why you couldn't play it in the early 70s.
I remember that song, yeah.
I'm gonna say.
Now, did he write it, Dick, and who was it inspired by?
You know, I don't know who it was inspired by, but he wrote it. And it just, the instrumentation, the movement of it, and then the story behind it was really great. But I have to run, but I'll tell you one very quick story. We worked out a deal where we brought Boston into the Waterbury Palace Theater. This was mid 70s, right when the Spaceship album, the first album, was like a monster. And these guys were all students up in I don't know whether they were at Harvard or they were all students up in Boston. And but they were the great instrumentalists. But this was the first time that they were going to really fine-tune their act on stage. So CBS, I worked out a deal with CBS where I gave them half the house, which was like almost 1,000 seats if they wanted it. And then we gave away the rest of the house. And the theater, we paid for the theater, but we paid very little because they loved the idea of being the first place that Boston was going to play. So they came in. And the backdrop behind the stage was this super graphic of the spaceship, the Boston spaceship. So during the first set, after the opening act, then they come on, and the place is going crazy. Now, mind you, half of them are AR people or just employees of CBS, and they're going nuts, and the listeners are going nuts. So I go backstage, and I'm in the dressing room, and I'm not giving much thought to it. And I'm having a bottle of water, and all of a sudden the lead singer walks in. Now, this is in the middle of their set. And I realized what they're doing is an instrumental. So he's just taking a break, and he's grabbing a bottle of water, and then he's going to go back out. So we talked for about 2 or 3 minutes, and that's exactly what he said. And he said, okay, I got to go out. I said, great. Have a great second set. You guys are sounding great. I know when you go out on tour, this is going to be unbelievable. And he was very excited. So I decide to walk to the other side of the back of the stage and come out on the other side of the house. So I'm walking backstage, literally right behind the spaceship, maybe 5 feet behind the drummer, when a suitcase or case, instrument case, falls down behind me and traps me. And I can't go forward because there was all stacked up with other cases. So now I am stuck in the middle of the stage, right behind the drummer and right behind the backdrop. And I had to stay there for, I'd say probably 45 minutes or so. It was perfect. I wasn't getting my head blown off with the speakers. I was hearing everything on the monitors. So I was really hearing it at a level that I could enjoy it. And secondly, I'm standing there, nobody can see me, and I'm watching the fans looking up at the, so my perspective is I'm seeing fans going, you know, and it was just one of those moments that you couldn't duplicate if you tried to produce it that way. It was just an accident. And so I stayed there for the rest of the concert. And then when they finished, then I thought, oh shit, they're gonna come out for 4 encores. And they came out and everything, and I came back out. But I thought how lucky I was to be able to enjoy them in that perspective and in that way, and get a chance to spend time with them after the show as well. But it was all because we wanted to try to do something that nobody else was doing, and they really had to figure out if they were going to be tourable. So this was really their first opportunity to test it out. So that's my story.
Oh my God.
Wow, that's
And
great.
wasn't it when they did that album or whatever, wasn't there just one guy that was the genius and then he brought in studio musicians with him?
Well, there was 5 or 6 in the group, but the lead singer was the one who put the group together. I can't remember his name now.
That's Brad Delp.
Yes.
Brad
Delp was it?
yeah. And he was a serious student. I mean, he was musician, college and musician, equal importance, as opposed to my life is music. He wanted to get his degree. And so, well, we had, you know, we talked for a couple of minutes in the dressing room, and it hadn't dawned on me. He's still in the middle of his show. He just walked in. And then it dawned on me that happens all the time, because that's why you get those instrumental, you know, carryovers, so that if somebody's really blowing their vocal cords out in a vocal, they take a break for a second, get a, you know, sometimes they just bring the water out on stage. He just happened to walk into the dressing room. So it was great.
Yeah, I think last night with the Stones, Jagger was out there for the whole time up in at the Gillette Stadium, and he
He's
left.
unbelievable. He is unbelievable.
Isn't he incredible? The guy is 80. He never stopped dancing and running for over, got to be close to 3 hours.
Yeah. And he's what, 83?
Oh,
maybe?
No, it was about 81, I think.
81.
81.
And the rest of the
That's
guys, I
lovely.
mean, Ron Wood was there, and of course Keith Richards, and they're all, you know, they're all up there. But I'll tell you, man, a performance and a half. But he left, and I think Ron Wood did a couple of songs. And but oh my, you know,
Well, that's what they do. They just leave. They take a break. They come back. You know, but it makes sense.
Oh yeah,
because you have to keep the energy going forward. I got to run, but thank you for giving me a minute to share the story. But it was since you're going in that direction.
Dick, one last thing before you go, and I want to ask everybody this, you know, because I'll try to hunt them down. If there's somebody from PLR or something, you know, if there's one, I don't care if it's anybody that was there. You know, was Pam Jams a PLR, or where was she? Was she at HCN or
Ham Jams?
Yeah,
Pam Brooks, she was at HCN.
Yeah.
Pam Brooks was HCN.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's down here in Florida.
Yeah, I think, you know, just
How
to
about
try to
Pam Landry, XCT?
You know who else would be good too, is if I can get her, as Marcia Simon. She was our first AM drive female personality.
Was that OMN?
No, PLR.
No, on
Oh,
PLR,
PLR?
she was, a groundbreaker.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And wasn't she at CCC before PLR? Because I think I remember working with her briefly over at CCC.
I think she might have been, but
Yeah.
she wasn't doing morning at that time.
Okay.
And she didn't start with us in the morning, but she ultimately followed Bob Dark, and did a really nice job. I saw them all not that long ago when we had the memorial for Gordon.
Right.
And So yeah, I'll see who I can get to join us. That would be really nice. And
Yeah, because once we bring in new blood, and they're always welcome to come back, but it also brings up a lot of other stories.
new stories, new perspectives.
Yep, yep. And I think I'm going to try to get Ron Dresner because his dad was Cy, and I know he's got.
I remember I remember them
What
both.
a character. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it was funny. I had a very good relationship with Cy, and everybody said, "How could you have a relationship with Cy?" I said, "Hey, just because we compete doesn't mean we have to hate. That's why one of my best friends was your father."
And and even when I left DRC, my dad said POP, Al Pellegrino, because that's really what it came down to. Even if you competed, if you were good operations, there may have been the competition, but there was always respect between the guys that were running it, even if it was a battle in the ratings.
Well, the point, and I'm going to leave on this, is that Al Pellegrino fired me after 25 minutes. Well, it had nothing to do with me. It was all political, but he didn't stand up for me. But by the end of the day, I was getting involved in the startup of PLR. So Al Pellegrino remained one of my best friends for life, because if it weren't for him doing that, I wouldn't be here having done what I did. And but I remember Al, a very, very good guy. Or Marshall Pite, he was very interesting at Waves, and we could dig up some old memories that way too.
Well, Dick, I mean, if it weren't for you and Barry and Ron Pell, I don't even know if I'd be sitting here today. You guys all threw me a lifeline there back shortly after. It was literally within months that Kelly passed.
I know.
You guys, that's when this radio friendship, this brotherhood, always means the world. So we thank you for that.
That's because that's what it is.
Yep.
Brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever it is.
Yep.
You are a good friend, and you also managed a piece of business that allowed us to separate ourselves from the charter schools while I was on the board of the charter schools.
Oh, that was a trip. Achievement first.
That's right. I'm still on the board.
This is real quick. My favorite one you guys used to send me to, if it was very close, send me to the market to make sure, the guys got interviewed, the deans got interviewed. And one station in Rhode Island was only Hispanic. And wouldn't you know, that's where I had to bring the talent to go on the air. And just the way radio works, and why I was thankful that I got sent there, was guy in the air knew nothing about it. And the GM who put it together wasn't there. So I'm walking into his station going, you're supposed to do an interview with her. But yeah, always fun on the road. There was nothing I wouldn't do, and there's nothing I wouldn't have fun with. So I appreciate that.
Well, I'll see if I can get either Pam or Marcia to join us in the next week or two. I think it'd be great, and maybe
especially hearing a woman in such a male-dominated world. I think it'd be great, because they'd have they probably wouldn't. Who knows what would happen these days? They tough skin.
Have a great weekend, guys.
God bless you, man. Thanks a lot.
Steve, hey, Steve, can I tell you my Al Pellegrino theory?
Okay.
Oh wait, I got to hear this.
As you know, I mean, Al was a really good guy, but he sometimes could be in a pretty foul mood.
Oh.
And I determined that the reason for that, because at some point when the people from Liberty took over and kind of kicked Al upstairs, and at that point, Al was no longer responsible for firing anyone. And he, from that time forward, he was never in a bad mood at the station. And I determined that the reason, if Al was ever in a bad mood, it was because he had to fire somebody and it tore him apart.
Yeah.
Because that's how good a guy he was.
I would not disagree, because even when he did that to me, and he explained that he had nothing whatsoever to do with it, and that it was a political decision that was really pushed by Marshall because he was angry. He was beside himself, and I get that, but it all worked out. So it always works out if you give it a chance.
Yep.
All right, see you guys. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Hey, Steve, I just wonder if I can have the group's ear for less than 60 seconds. Tracy sent me a couple of jingle tracks, because it looks like he's going to be able to get us a new intro jingle. And what he sent me was the original WDRC version of the one that's being used now, and also the backing track. Now, when I listened to these, I said, "Well, are we sure we want to go with the same your friend, whatever?" But
You don't want that.
when
Tracy thought my intro that I had taken from that was bad. Imagine all of us singing that. Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Tracy's made a suggestion that the lyrics could be your friends, radio friends again, and then have the girls sing it first, and the guys, radio friends again, have got a lot to share, but we don't necessarily have to use those original.
There's enough cuts from the package. It's funny, I'm wandering the warehouse right now looking for the multi-track for that sucker. I mean, there's a ton of cuts. So, I mean, we're not limited to that one. That just happens to be the one that Dave's using. So I'm certainly open to suggestions. No problem.
Tracy, maybe you can send me to the extent you can, whatever you got. And then we can share the best of that with the group, because I think it should be a group decision.
And I'm not speaking. I just know that what Tracy was able to do for me, but I don't know, Tracy, could you get the TM singers or what?
That's exactly what we'll do. I mean, they're on queue waiting because I have other cuts. Now, there's the original master for Where Your Friends Are right there, the 8-track original.
Wow.
From
1971. 2-inch, Tracy?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that a 2-inch tape?
No, it's a 1-inch 8.
1-inch 8, okay.
1-inch 8, and that's the original from when they cut the tracks in. I don't think the tracks are done in Dallas. Those tracks are done in L.A.
But if you don't have the multi-track, they can sing to that. It's an instrumental, right?
I gave them the way TM used to do stuff. Again, every company did things differently. TM did their original masters on a 1-inch 8, which is what the tapes behind me are. And then what they would do is they would take them and they would transfer them to a 4-track. I'm going to turn this around. So since I'm playing show and tell. So you'd have a 4-track. And then what they would do with those is, let me see if I can find one over here. They dub the tracks up to 4 tracks and they leave 4 tracks open for vocals. So you'd have a vocal master, which would look like, here we go. So you'd have like a Warm and Wonderful for WGLO. They transfer it, they'd sing it, they'd mix it in 1973 and send it out the door. And they kept these reels. There are about 25, 30,000 of these, and they threw them out right before they offered them to us. Executive long-range planning, but the handful of them still exist. So that's how they would do it. So what I've given TM, because TM doesn't obviously have their tapes, they're here. And I've given them the 4-track vocal masters for friends.
Tracy, did they digitize them?
No, I did.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I did. I mean, you got to understand. Hold on a second. Let's continue on our tour of show and tell, which is, I feel like I've got the floor for a minute here. Yeah, these are the DAT tapes we're working on transferring from Thompson Creative right here.
Wow.
There's a few. But, yeah, what we did is we set up a 1-inch 8 along with Dolby units. We have multi-tracks for DA88s. These are dead units. Back there in a crate, all the way in the back, is a digital 32-track from Tony Griffin Productions, which also TM stuff. If anyone wants a copy of the history of rock and roll, there's all the reels. And those call letters should be familiar.
For those, yes.
Yeah, those aren't the ones from Lee. Those are the ones we got from the station. But yeah, I mean, TM has the multi-track so they can remix on the fly, because what they'll do is they'll call me up and say, where are they? And I'll say they're on TMCI 8-track number 3. And I'll give them, and I've already got a list of where each cut falls on the tape. So I can just tell them where the cut is and they can just grab it.
I hope you're insured.
I'm sorry?
I hope you're insured.
You can't insure the stuff. You can't. That's the problem with this. Here's like image 73. Here's let's see. There's the master for the U campaign down there. Everybody knows that. These are all the
nightmares that some gigantic degausser is going to go over his building someday.
I'm telling you. I mean, this was going to go into a dumpster. I spent a fortune bringing this stuff up here because the people down there didn't want to pay to store it. Here's all the Fair West productions. Here's the TM references from 1990 on DAT tape. Here's again Fair West, the late Jim West stuff. Here's we just went through the TM stuff here. This is like the 8-track for Dick Hamilton stuff, like the actualizers. That's became hot hits. There's the multi-track for it right there.
You run into degraded tape?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have food dehydrators to bake them. We've dealt with a lot of bad tape. Trust me, a lot of bad tape.
Wow.
Here's more TM stuff. There's the beat goes on. Let's see here.
The only thing worse than the bad tape, Jim, is the old dried out splices between cuts.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I'll walk out front and show you the problem with that. Here's all the Gwen Sound multi-tracks. Here's all the Gavin Connor multi-tracks. Let's see. Over here is all the, let's see. I'm just walking through here. Here's all of Bill Meek's personal tapes and a lot of the Pam's packages. There's the multi for Fun Vibrations right there. There's the multi-track for Smart Set, which
Did I see KDKA up there?
You did, just to the left of where he is, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the instrumentals for their package.
Huh.
Yeah, it's been transferred to that. CM, that's the Century Music Library from Mark Century. Smart Set, that's the package that is used on the oldies station, which Dick's running down in Florida. There's more multi-tracks. WPOP's fun station with a happy difference multi-track. WABC. I mean, you wander around in here, and unless you know, if I drop dead, nobody's going to know what this stuff is. Let's put it that way.
Don't
Drop dead.
That's it.
Thank you. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm not planning on it. Here's all the Pepper Tanner stuff that was schlepped down from Memphis. As we continue the tour.
Any MEX stuff there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got all the MEX jingles. And if I don't have them, Ed Bruder has them, certainly.
I do. I have the station copies.
As a matter of fact, Ed, hold on a second.
Mark Century owned WFEA right before I went there.
That's true. And the sad tale about Mark Century is they had big guys. Mitch Lee, the guy who wrote the soundtrack for Man of La Mancha, was a partner in that organization. And they didn't keep any of the station's submasters. They kept some of the tracks. But all the
I've got the track rails. I went down. Mitch Lee had offices right next to the Plaza in New York. My friend Chuck, may he rest in peace, and I went down there with a caravan, and we took back all the Century Music Library tapes. We took back all the backing tracks, mono backing tracks, like the Young Americans. But there's a lot of stuff here. I mean,
have you ever thought of how much money is invested in all that? I mean, in the production of all that?
You want out of my back pocket, honestly, and I don't talk too much about it. I've got about $500,000 in here out of my own pocket.
And Tracy, the actual productions of each of those jingle packages themselves, if you total that all up, it would be tens of millions, wouldn't it?
Easily.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but as far as monies I put out of my own pocket per se, to move tapes, I mean, there's a company called Alpha Sound in the UK, and their multi-tracks are sitting right over. You want some jam demos? They're here. You want some TM demos? They're here. Let's see what else is interesting. I mean, for every package that's custom. And then what TM would do, of course, they would. Oh, here we go. Here's one that everybody should know. I always talk about this when I talk about Drake. The reason they call it the Motown package is these are the original Motown Drake jingles.
Da da da. Those?
Yeah, and they have the later ones, and then the original ones. Hold on. This is it. These are the bum 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 bum.
In a side room, he's holding Anita Kerr and Johnny Mann hostage.
Their remains are on the shelf. But I mean, it's just all sorts of stuff, and I mean, there's no way I will ever transfer all this stuff in my lifetime.
Wow.
But it's here. And for every TM package that they sung, let me go out to the other room. There's the multi-track, a lot of Pam's packages. Thank you, John.
Tracy, what are you looking for? I mean, is there a holy grail for you that you can't get, or what?
No, the only thing I've pretty much got everything that I want. I mean, you know what? There's a couple of odds and ends I'd love to have copies of, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And then people give us their collections. All right, here we go. This is how TM, we transferred all these. You can see the CD number. KEYO, Sound America, Real 1 of 2, Real 2 of 2, 15 IPS mono when it was produced. And there are pallets of these. And for those of TIC history, the holy grail of TIC, when Chase sold them, he wanted everything out of the building. They were going to throw these out.
Tracy, do you own the rights to everything?
No. No, not at all. There's certain ones where the copyrights have expired.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly put copies of these up on some of these things up. I have permission from TM to sell copies, but I can't license them to stations. We make a deal on that sort of stuff if someone wants to reuse it. But John Wolford owns Pam's and the Jam stuff. But a lot of the materials, the copyrights have expired.
How about the history of rock and roll stuff there?
That's owned by TM. I just relicensed it for our LPFM. They own that, and they own the history of country music also. So that is still copyrighted, and I've got that on CD because they when it was Jones TM they syndicated. But as I pointed out, the reels are here.
Hey Tracy, you'd be interested in this. You guys have all heard of Sigma Sound in Philly.
Yeah, down in Philadelphia, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, about a week and a half ago on the PBS station here, they did a whole half-hour feature on recording, record pressing, vinyls, and so on and so forth. And as part of the special, they featured the Sigma Sound tapes that were in a storage unit in New Jersey someplace. When Sigma Sound closed up a few years ago, they put these in storage and nobody wanted them. Somebody called Drexel University and they said, we have 7,000 boxes of tapes. Now you got to remember, Sigma Sound did all the Philly sound stuff, the OJs, the Teddy Pendergrass, Stevie Wonder. I mean, you name it, they were in Philly recording. Stevie Wonder, 70s, 80s. It's just a legendary place. It was Philly's Motown. So they called Drexel University and said, yeah, we'll take those tapes. So they found. I
would have come down and gotten them too.
And there they were, 7,000 boxes, much like what you have over there.
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, I'm showing you the stuff that's on the shelves. I'm not showing you the stuff, like, for example, Pepper Tanner, Ed Bruder mentioned, the problem with the production libraries, like Sounds of Broadcasting. I'm sure everybody's used those at one point or another in their career. The problem with the tapes is that the tapes are sitting on hubs and they have paper leader and dried splices between every track. So if I want to sit here, like here's the Tanner, I forgot the camera's this way. There's the Tanner Total Sound Library. There's the multi-tracks for a lot of this. There's the multi-tracks. Unfortunately, a lot of the reels were labeled. Actually, a lot of the reels were didn't have cards in the box. They just had a number on them. And TM, the last management team, threw out all the indexes. So I have, probably 500 reels that just say Bandmaster 1, Bandmaster 2. It would take me a lifetime if I knew what the stuff was to begin with to figure it out.
Do you have climate control in that room?
There's no air conditioning here. It can get up to about 80, but it doesn't get any lower than 56.
And how about humidity?
Not an issue. I mean, it can get a little humid in here, but again, the tapes can be dried out. These are all John Lund's tapes.
Hey, Tracy, have you and maybe you've done this already, but I would think at some point if you could put I'm sure you could find a way to put a bunch of them together. I would think for Morgan Cunningham at TIC, it'd be great to have him interview you and play some multiple jingles if you can. I don't know copyright and all that stuff, but I think that would be interesting to look at the history of TIC.
Well, Morgan has a set of keys to the warehouse here, Steve, and he has access to the stuff, and he's well aware of what's here. And he interviewed a few weeks ago, actually probably a couple of months ago, he interviewed this woman named Terry Lee Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry Lee, for those who are of a certain age, which I'm not, I'm younger, but I know what the stuff is. They have these things called the hometown songs. And they do a custom hometown song, well, re-lyric hometown song for the stations in your market. And I think she sang like 250 of them, and she's still around at 97 years old. And he interviewed her on the air. And
that wasn't the Wonderful Town, Wonderful People package.
No, that's
Ullman. Was
Ullman, Richard Ullman.
That's Ullman and PFO. No, this is the let me tell you about my hometown. Then and then it'll be like Houston, Houston. That's my hometown. I'm seeing.
Hey, Tracy, would there be any interest, do you think, if you were to present, much like the history of rock and roll, the history of jingles, have it annotated, have it narrated, and go in succession? I don't know, it could involve maybe 30 minutes.
It's been done. Didn't John Beaufort do that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
It's been done. Here's the TM song, if anyone's familiar with it.
You know, Steve, you mentioned TIC and the history of jingles. As a station, they didn't use jingles till about 77 or 78. That was the first time they bought a package, and that was TM.
That was and that was when I was when you were able to mix that mix it with Tracy's thing. You know, it's interesting because what about air checks going back on that, Ed? I mean, I know you do a lot of different things. You got any air checks from TIC throughout the years?
I do. I have quite a bit. And Tracy, as he pointed out, also has all the transcription discs. So they've got plenty of air checks available. And I guess it's just a question of how much time Morgan has to dub stuff and incorporate it.
And honestly, I mean, with Morgan's plate is full from time to time, but maybe, and again, I can just throw this out there for you guys. We just give him the mission. This is what we need. Because, you know, knowing his plate, and he's a young guy, you know, to maybe get him to come up and do some of this stuff could be tough. But maybe
he's done a lot of it. I mean, he certainly keeps quiet about it, but he's certainly done a lot of transfers of a lot of stuff here. And, you know, I mean, the thing is, I mean, it's like the black hole. There's just so much stuff around here. You have to pick and choose what you consider to be important.
Yep.
As far as TIC archives, I mean, I went in there. When they got out of the gold building, they were throwing everything into the dumpster. That's how I ended up with all the transcription discs going back to 1926. I got boxes of photos. In Florida, I have 2 file cabinet drawers going back to 1920s. I mean, the problem you have with radio stations, and maybe I'm generalizing, but I don't think I am, is that they don't give a rat's butt about their history. They're busy trying to make history. They don't have the equipment to play the tape, so they go, oh, look, it's a reel-to-reel tape. We haven't had a reel-to-reel recorder in the building since 1985. Let's throw that in the dumpster.
Hey, when I worked at KDKA in Pittsburgh, right, the oldest commercial station supposedly in the country, I thought that the record library would be a library. It would be filled with great stuff. It was a broom closet.
Oh,
they had thrown everything out. They were down to, you know, a pittance. I worked at 500-watt AM stations that had better libraries, and it's that's the attitude they have.
Fortunately,
that's the way it is.
TIC came up with the era when TIC used to do anniversary shows like every 5 years, and those are all recorded and preserved. So Morgan can pull a lot of stuff out of the old anniversary programs that TIC aired over the years.
Tracy, the original history of rock and roll that Drake did, I believe WRKO aired that around 1970. Did it come out 71?
Yeah, we had it here.
Yeah. You said you have that original. It was about 6 hours long, I think. What was the length of that?
I don't know how long it was. I have the original, the reels I have, which I pointed out there. There was a company a friend of mine worked for in New York called Cinema Sound, and they were back going to the 50s. That's where like Burns and Allen used to record all their drops and stuff. And the woman was 100 years old. My friend John Rockwell took the archives that he wanted and he dropped off the reels that were there from the history of rock and roll. He dropped off, there's a thing called the Capital Q library of sound effects and elements. And those are sitting around here on 7-inch reels. I've never gotten to transfer. Those are still copyrighted by Capitol. What I have here are the reels from there. There are a couple of air check collectors that do have different versions of on air of the history of rock and roll. And TM.
Yeah, each of the Drake stations had one of their own guys narrate it. And I think Bob, the original was 12 hours long. I know Frank Kingston Smith did the RKO narration.
Yeah, I remember listening to it. I didn't hear the thing in its entirety, but I was very intrigued about the first, I don't know, I think they began around 1950, early 50s, and went up to the present day, which was like 1970. Do you have that digitized? Do you have copies of that?
I don't have the RKO specific version. I have the version digitized, and somebody had sent me some. I had to find them MP3s of different versions that aired around the country, two or three different versions.
And they redid it too, I believe, a few years later.
Well, there's a version. I mean, again, they resyndicated it. You know, the history is Drake Chenault sold to Wagon Wheel, who sold to Triad Group, who merged with this one, and that, you know, but the bottom line is there is a syndicated version still available to be purchased by radio stations. Obviously, it's dated. I think it's 75 hours, I want to say. And it's all digitized. There's sheets that tell what everything are, and TM is selling it. I mean, again, the station would have to relicense it from them. There's also a history of country music. I'm not sure if they're going to resyndicate that one, but I have a digitized copy of that. The question is how relevant, how many stations that are out there currently would actually pay money for a syndicated radio show about the history of rock and roll that dumps in the late 70s.
Yeah, well, the whole thing that we're all seeing is, between iHeart and Odyssey and some of the other ones, they as you say, they don't really give a rat's ass. And it's like, oh, is it going to cost money? And that's the problem. It's like money, money. And they don't even look at their history and say that. There's some that really don't care.
I'm always amazed. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm always amazed that American Top 40 is being resyndicated, that they're airing the old shows.
Well, I'm telling you, and I talked to somebody about this the other day, and apparently Kathy's not ready to do it yet. But man, you want to imagine the ratings you could pull by just being able to air Rush Limbaugh? They could put Rush Limbaugh back in the same time segment he was before. And that's the deal, I guess, what I understand with Sirius and Howard Stern is why they pay him so much money that long after Howard's gone, Howard can still exist like the stuff that he plays now. So maybe it's, I don't know. It would be great. And I mean, I always enjoy it. I'm certainly not political of the way, and not politically interested in what, Rush was about, but his parodies and all the stuff that he did. I think that show would still pull an incredible audience.
Tracy, the movie business was notorious they lost a lot of their early stuff because they didn't store it properly. And then somewhere along the line, they used a lot of silver nitrate and caught fire and stuff like that. But somewhere along the line, someone said we should store this stuff properly. And they have they bought some abandoned mines in Western PA.
Wow.
And literally they store all of these classic movies like Gone with the Wind, their masters, in these salt mines in Western Pennsylvania. And I would have thought that a lot of these, record companies and movie and the like would have taken their stuff and put it in a place like that too.
A lot of them have, Jim. A lot of them have put it into Iron Mountain. There is a video out there showing the archives in a mountain of what's left of Universal, because of course Universal finally admitted that they're building with all. I mean, I can't go back and remix the New Colony 6, Spanking Our Gang, or any of that stuff from Mercury, Polydor, A&M, because it all went up in a fire a dozen or so years ago. But a lot of the stuff that does exist is in working warehouses and production places to mix it out in Iron Mountain underground. And there is a video out there on YouTube showing going into there and having them pull out an archive of something from the 70s and remixing it and remastering it. So they have done that, as they have with CBS. When I went down to CBS, I bought some DBX units, which are sitting right here. And I had to go down to New York to their studios in Manhattan to pick this up. And I was talking to the guy there, and he said they had everything in Iron Mountain. So if they wanted a master, like, because we were talking about the Circle, for example, he said, well, if I want the master to Red Rubber Ball, I look it up over here in this card catalog, and I see it's in the warehouse and it's on reel number blah, blah, blah. He says, I send a memo and it gets brought in. We have a facility. They had an oven there to bake the reels, because that's what you do with reels from the early 70s that are crappy, the crappy configuration they're using. You have to bake them to dry them out. He says that we can transfer them and then we just return the reel. So, CBS, Sony, it does have all their archives. Warner Brothers maintains warehouses in Los Angeles. They, which are non-discrete, they're not labeled Warner's warehouse. It's kind of like they bought warehouses and the stuff is sitting there. And, a lot of the multi-tracks for a lot of songs are floating around now. I mean, they're legitimately or otherwise. I mean, I'm not going to talk on a recorded thing here as to what I have sitting on multi-track for songs.
I have some old air checks from like BZ from in 1975, and I go back sometimes to see whether they work, and it's like, forget it. So you've given me a tip. You bake it.
Well, what you do is
how long?
We use to play it safe. We buy American Harvester food dehydrators, so you can dehydrate your food at the same time. So it's basically 135 degrees for about 2 hours in we do it in an air fryer kind of thing.
So
like
I shouldn't stick it in the microwave for like 20 seconds.
I've seen people do that. I wouldn't go doing it myself.
Definitely on a metal reel.
They actually did that here in Boston.
But keep in mind, we did bake to get the TM references, which I showed you an example of. We baked 3,000 reels of tape to transfer them.
Wow.
We had multiple food dehydrators, and we sat here and baked them, had to wait a day for them to cool off and make sure, ran a dub, put them back up on the shelf, and start with the next batch. We did, I think we did close to 6,000 reels.
How long do they stay refreshed?
30 days.
Wow. And then you have to do it again? How long?
Yeah,
how many times can you do it?
You could do it for infinite. I mean, so far as we found, because what happens is the tapes turn to mud, and basically the baking soaks the liquid out of them, so that they re-adhere to the tape. And after a while, they start to, absorb the liquid again into the reels. There's a few that we haven't been able to get transfers on, but I mean, a lot of the multi-tracks, I've done them for professional recording studios, where they say, hey, we have a 2-inch reel. Can you bake this for us? I mean, I haven't done it in a number of years, but we were doing that pretty regularly for some of the New England recording studios back 20 years ago.
Tracy, it's funny that you say that baking. It's funny you say that, because I have a lot of stuff from my dad that goes back into the 60s. And I will tell you, and I mean, even Dave and I pulled out the letter to Kennedy from back in 63. And the interesting thing is, they're in the attic. And with the attic, in many cases, it gets close to that. So I wouldn't be surprised if multiple years of that going on, that somehow it has, done that. And I couldn't believe it. I'm going, well, there won't be anything there. But
earlier tapes from the 50s and 60s have held up better, because it was the formulation of the tape that came in. It was the high output, low noise, the Holm tapes, which started about 1980. And all the manufacturers like Ampex started putting that stuff out there. In about 5 years, they realized it turns to gum after that. But
what happened was, and again, the tapes that you've got from the 60s are probably either on polyester or most likely acetate. And I'm not going to sit here and play schoolboy and show you how you tell the difference quickly, because I had to go pull a few reels. But the reels really started around 1971, 72. They stopped using whale oil in the lubrication and configuration, and that's when the tapes really started to turn to crap that they were manufacturing. So if you have old Ampex 456 or Scotch 206, 208, they're probably 9 times out of 10 they're going to have to be baked. And if you have reels from the 60s, the early 60s, and they're acetate, they may be crinkly. They may do this over the heads. So you have to put a thing. We put a thing on with a Q-tip against the back of it, enough to hold it to the tape head, but not enough to make the reel slow down.
Jim, you mentioned movies, and many, many years ago, I'm going to guess it was around probably 1983. I had the opportunity to go out. I was dating this girl, and it was her aunt was Jean Kerr from Please Don't Eat the Daisies, who wrote that. And her uncle was Walter Kerr. And there's a Walter Kerr Theater on Broadway now. And he was a movie critic. And the house had a bell tower in it. This is the kind of home they had. And in fact, the ceiling in one room was from the Vanderbilt mansion. But they were probably two of the nicest people I ever met. You walk into the garage and there's all these huge Broadway, posters and everything. He comes down and they're just talking family. I mean, it was just like my girlfriend and her father and her mother, and they were just talking family stuff. He comes down, he goes, "Good afternoon, I'm Walter Kerr. Would you like to see my office?" Go down to his office, and he had seats there from a Broadway theater, but he had a huge collection of movies. And he was part of a group of guys that their job was to archive them. But also he said, after so many, I don't know what period of time it was, they have to take them out and run them to let them breathe. And it was just amazing to go through there. And that was just something that he enjoyed doing. But I mean, just not to the extent of a mountain or something, but there were certain things. He talked about, Groucho Marx coming over the house, talked about Katharine Hepburn coming out and walking a route around their house to keep exercising, Carl Reiner coming to the house. But he knew that I was just like in awe, like it was a museum. He goes, "Would you like to see my office?" Again, keep breathing them, getting them out and getting to breathe.
The problem is that there's a limited number of people that are really interested in this stuff. I mean, I can count the number of people that, they're again, having a section on media for media preservation over on Facebook. I mean, there's other groups that have hundreds of users. We probably have, I don't know, 100, 150. I don't pay too much attention. But, the problem is, the question asked before, how much money have I got invested in this place? And, conservatively, I'm between $250,000, close to $500,000 out of my back pocket over the last.
Hell of a pair of pants, man. Boy,
yeah. There goes my kid's inheritance, folks.
Oh my God.
But, just trying to keep equipment working. I mean, you have technology, and these are all dead tape recorders that need various disrepair. Like this 4-track, you can see the capstan is dissolved all over the place. It's daunting trying to keep equipment working so that you can transfer the stuff if you care enough. Whoops, where's that thing going? Care enough to do it. So it's I could spend 8 hours a day here for the next 5 years, and I won't really have made a dent in all this stuff.
John Leslie, I was just enjoying your interview with Gary Berkowitz, and I noticed on some of the interviews that you get to do, some of these guys have jock shouts and some other things they bring along jingle wise. It's really do you get to, is any of this stuff that you could share?
Well, actually, the majority of that stuff that you hear, I dig up myself.
Mm-hmm.
These guys didn't keep anything. They don't. Exactly. Some people have some of their sound, some of their audio, but for the most part, what you hear, those little intros, those drop-ins, sound bites, I find them typically on the internet somewhere. And it takes me about a day and a half to prepare for each one of those.
No, I tell you,
full-time, part-time hobby.
The deal with radio people, though, is they tend to be transient and move from place to place. And boyfriends, girlfriends, wives, whoever say, "Oh, we don't need this shit anymore. We're not going to move this in the next move to wherever we're going." And it goes out in the dumpster. I mean, I
threw out about 1,000 air checks, skimmed air checks. When we moved to Florida, I turned the box upside down over the garbage can.
Oh,
and in it went. And my daughter said, "You threw all of those out?" I said, "Did you want them?" She said, "No."
Well, that's the problem. And the problem is, I'm transferring stuff. There's a local DJ from here who passed away in the last year or so named Phil Drumheller, Phil D. Mm-hmm. And he started in 1958 he was at WHYN, he was at WNDR. He had his own radio station in Greenfield. He recorded everything. He recorded his kids' birthday parties. Has films of it. and they were going to sell his house up in Shelburne Falls. And the kids called me up. I called the kids when I went to his wake. And I said, if there's any archives there, let me know. No, they let me know. They had no interest. I mean, there's tapes of them, their birthday parties from age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20. They said, what are we going to do with this stuff? The stuff is, hold on a second. Show and tell time, folks. So the stuff is sitting. Well, that's what these boxes are right here. That's there's reel-to-reel tapes of his kids' birthday parties. There are, there's tons of stuff, and I will sit here, and I've already done a cursory go through of all the, what am I going to do with carts? Yes, I have multiple cart machines. Those are all carts. But am I going to sit there and try to fix pads on 400 or 500 carts to get one play out of them? I don't think it's that important at this point.
Well, what about Tracy and I mean, so I don't know if there'd be that many people that would have interest, but there may be. What about, families that say, well, I'm thrilled that you've got a lot of DRC stuff and I'm not, TIC's not really ever been my concern. I love doing the Saturday morning show, and I know enough about it. But are there people out there would say, something, if you can put these in storage for me and protect them, would they be willing? I don't know if it would be a month or a buyout or something where they would give you money because you're dumping a lot of your own money. Is there anything there, or you don't think about that?
Well, I've talked, for example, you and I were in an email chain with somebody who just moved from Westport to the West Coast, and we're discussing his archives. The thing is, do I have personal archives of personal people that are air checks and beyond and stuff like that? Yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I've picked up along the way, but a lot of it will just sit here on a shelf in a corner and collect dust, and that's fine as long as it's preserved. My philosophy is this: the reality here is, as much as I've got, I've spent thousands and thousands. My last TM adventure in 2009, I brought up 6,905 pounds of reels at $2 a pound. Do the math. From Tom Merriman's personal lockers. I brought out all these multi-tracks that weigh 22 pounds a piece over here from TM. That they didn't care about. Now they care about them. They can make money for them. Back then they didn't. Again, it's here. It's on the shelf. I may never do anything with it. My kids know what my plan is, and they should honor my wishes if I fall out the window into the canal next door. They know who to call. They know who to ignore because, unfortunately, the people come out of the woodwork when something like that happens, like rabid dogs. To see what they can glom onto. And I'm no different. I mean, I started this, I'm a collector. I still consider myself a collector 50 years later. The thing is, I've put my money where my mouth is. Others don't. And that's the problem. I mean, you never know how much of this stuff is going to survive. I look at the Universal fire that went on 13, 14 years ago, and there's stories about all the, would it be anything to me, the Bing Crosby tapes they never use, the jazz recordings they never used, which, Bob would probably drool over if they still existed. Everybody has their interest. There's certain things that are in here that I couldn't care about and I don't care about, but they're historic. And my mission driven here is to make sure that we have it here in the event that somebody's looking for it.
Tracy, do you save any of it to a cloud?
What we're going to share, we save, and I'm going to be putting up, I don't think I can show the picture here. I took a picture the other day, which is going to be the cover photo for the Facebook page in a couple of days. It's a line of the hard drives with just some of the jingle hard drives and music hard drives. I think I have like 8 or 9 of them set up. So I don't save them to the cloud, but I make sure that if I have digitized something, there's copies of it off premise. So if my house blows up in the next explosion, there's an extra set somewhere else, so it's not lost to the wind.
Tracy, I have a question for you. Do you remember a period when they used to insert the call letters in certain songs? Like I can remember Paul McCartney's Jet. It went KB15 Jet. Remember those?
They would do a thing called pop tops. Pam's did them. I have samples of a lot of them. If you'd
Joey Reynolds did a series of them too.
I mean,
he called his Mingles.
Boston, yeah.
Yeah, Joey did his. Yeah, joys
sorry.
were mingles. Yeah, I've got a lot of those from Pam's did a lot of those. John Wolford actually put those together. If you want some examples of them to listen to, play with, pop me an email, send you over a few reels of them.
We had one from DRC sooner or later.
The Grassroots.
Grassroots. Do you remember that? They sang the intro.
Yeah, but that was actually done by the Grassroots, if I'm not mistaken.
You're exactly right. It was.
It's like TIC. I remember the I can't remember the black artist's name when they were doing the disco era. She sang the TIC FM music box for whatever song it was. When I cleaned out TIC when they were moving out of the Gold Building, I was looking for those reels because I figured they'd be around, and I found the boxes, but not the reels. The reels themselves have been tossed onto the floor somewhere.
I used to do my own with Lee Michaels. Do you know what I mean? But I would just stick a jingle in there with that space at the end where he had the false ending. That was just a stupid thing to do.
We had some country artist did it when I was in Kansas City, released a song, and we agreed to play it, and so he re-recorded it with our call letters, and he's driving down the highway in his truck, and he's got a C clamp. Those were the lyrics. I have a C clamp on my radio tuned to KCKN.
Remember the recording of Good Lovin' by the Rascals?
Yes.
The pause in the middle, and how many jocks would put the jock shout in the pause? Lee Gordon is guilty.
Yep.
Hey, Bob, I think you were guilty too. 'Cause I remember running the board and was playing it, and you threw in the WDRC Hartford, the ID. I remember.
Yeah, I never had a jock shout, so that's what we did.
Yeah.
I got one.
And we were always so proud when we hit it, and then it would just come right back in with a song, and there was no overlap of the jingle, but you had to hit that like right on the money. Yeah.
It's the post. Going back one step, I'm going to put up the DIRC. Going back to what Pete had said, I'll put up the WDRC Where Your Friends Are package up on the server. I'll send it out in an email. I guess I should just send it to everybody, and if someone will scratch that, and what's this for? And I'll put it up on the server as an MP3 file. So if anybody has any ideas aside from the backing track that I sent them for what we should be using as a so-called theme for Radio Friends, again, pipe right up on it.
And Tracy, I just sent out an email explaining exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
Anticipating that you'd be doing that, asking for this to be a team effort, because I mean it's important enough, and then we'll get it, not belabor it, but get it done, and it should be a team effort. So.
Hey, now what about you mentioned Tracy, because I got fooled by this one. Still the One, Orleans, when ABC or whatever went to using that wasn't Orleans?
No, that was all done by Jam. They re-sang it for every TV station in the country. The one thing that Jam did do a re-sing over for a lot of stations is when they came out with "We Built This City."
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a TIC had. Hold on a second here. Let me walk down the hallway. A lot of stations had that re-sung with a different front end on it.
Oh wow.
Oh.
There's the reel.
So then do they buy out, or their royalties to these bands, or what?
No, not at all. They just play it, and of course the band gets the normal royalties for the song. It just happens to sing about Hartford and TIC.
Now you said, I know Tracy. There was
just like anything else.
I know on the Friends package, Tracy, there were some people from Elvis's band on there, or what was the Elvis connection on some of the Friends stuff?
Wasn't Janie Fricke the lead female vocalist?
Yes.
Yeah, Tracy's locked up kind of here.
Yeah, Tracy's frozen.
He's down the wrong end of his warehouse.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're back.
Okay. Yeah, Janie Fricke sang on that. Ronnie Tutt played drums from Elvis's band. The tracks were cut. TM used to do the tracks in either Vegas or Los Angeles. Keep in mind, there were so many different entertainment things going on in Vegas. It was easy to do a session there. I mean, there are lots and lots of recording studios. So they take the train from Dallas
on WDRC. Is that Janie Fricke?
That's Janie Fricke.
Wow.
Yep.
And actually, wasn't the Wibbage package in Philadelphia cut just prior to DRC? Weren't they the first station? Because they were both Buckley owned.
WIBG, WOKY, WNAP were the first ones sung. And Skip Bouchard from WNAP, I think, is
Indianapolis.
the one who had a big part in writing the package.
Well, I remember because that was that jock shout was so good, and I remember talking to my dad, and and he basically turned that into solid gold. Remember, and that was originally Skip Bouchard, but
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but also the credits, there was an audio credit listing all the musicians and all the talent that were involved with Where Your Friends Are, which I've put online in the past. If I can find it, easily I'll throw it up online. It just lists all the musicians. Because again, a lot of the stuff was, the tracks were cut in Las Vegas.
Little trivia note that the DRC master tape of Friends had 6 cuts, which the station ultimately didn't buy and never aired, that they were aired in the Wimage package. And I have those up on the drcobg.com website.
We found those by chance, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Ed, you mentioned that, and I know you got the POP and the DRC websites. Are there other ones that you have for other stations?
Yeah, I've done one for WFEA in Manchester and a kind of a mini site for KBR in Manchester, which Pete's mentioned on.
Yes.
When he was Pete Stone in those days. But
Pete Stoned.
Yeah. I haven't done any others that are that in depth.
Does anybody have audio on this Mad Daddy that I sent a request?
I got a lot of audio on both Mad Daddy and when he was straight as Pete Myers, his actual identity on WNEW. And he was a great MOR jock, but you never know he was Mad Daddy.
If I send you the fella's email, can you connect with him and let him know about that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know
I got a PDF that actually has his whole life story about how he went from Cleveland to New York and all the problem he had over there. Yeah.
Can I send
it like an Alan Freed story almost?
It had a really sad ending. He killed himself in 1968 while he was not at WNEW, but at home while he was still employed at the station.
Yeah, this guy's writing this whole book about that, and he came to me through somebody else at another radio station. So I will I'll send that out again because I know I got some comments from some different guys, and if I could send Mike's name out to you guys and you can connect directly with him, I know it'll mean the world to him. I invited him to come to this group too, but he and his wife are doing a book, so that could be kind of cool. But,
there's a few Mad Daddy air checks on YouTube, but I don't think they're scoped. I mean, but he plays great records anyway. But there's a few on YouTube. The quality isn't too bad. But I mean, if there's other stuff out there, I always thought he was one of the best there was. I always loved his stuff.
Hey, Tracy, back to the jingles again. I think I asked you this once before. In the POP in-crowd jingle set, that 2.5 instrumental of the guy playing piano or girl, whoever it was, do you know who was playing piano on that for the instrumental?
I don't know. That was done as part of the in-crowd package, which was PAM Series 30, and a number of stations had it.
It was the Ramsey Lewis sound-alike.
Yeah, exactly. They would play the station's logo in as part of the in-crowd.
Right.
I'll dig out the POP version if you don't have it.
I do have it, but I was very curious whether or not it was actually Ramsey Lewis or whether it was a studio musician.
I doubt it. It was probably Yulebox. I mean, he was there. He was the big musician, writer at PAMS at the time, and jazz guy. So it probably was Yul that was playing the thing.
Yeah, because it's dead on. If you've heard it, it's dead on to Ramsey Lewis.
I've heard it. I've heard a number of different versions of it. But if I had to guess, and again, I'm not the authority. I wasn't there. It was, it was a long time ago. I would guess it was probably Yulebox.
Well, before I turn off here, I would like to say that there's some great info here. And Tracy, if people want to reach out to you, email, website, what do you got? Facebook, just so anybody who's listening to this Zoom who may be looking for something can contact you.
Well, first of all, I'd suggest, there's a bunch of different jingle websites on Facebook. I'm involved in 2 or 3 of them, and 2 or 3 I ignore because I don't like the people involved. We run our own. It's under Media Preservation Foundation on Facebook. If you want to join, let you right in. I tend to put some stuff as SoundCloud files on there. If you want to get in touch with me personally, my personal email is just my full name, which is Tracy Carman, TracyCarman. No other vowels than A, no underscore, special characters, or other sort of crap, gmail.com.
Member FDIC.
Substantial penalty for early withdrawal.
Equal housing lender.
Exactly.
All right, well, I'm gonna kill the recording, and hopefully anybody would like to stay can stay for a little bit afterwards. So does anybody want anything they want to include on this recording before I close it off here? But so thanks a lot, everybody. We are for those of you that are with the Zoom, we got to get off now so we can do some smut and gossip without recording. And I think thanks a lot, guys. And I guess we'll look to connect again next week, which will be the June 7th for another edition of Radio Friends. Again, I'm Steve Parker, and thanks a lot for hanging out with some of our friends again right here. Catch you next time. Thanks.
Your friend has got a lot to share.